I understand. This can sound insane. Two different characters that are basically a total opposite of each other can't be the same person. How this should even work if he is right there with Yuzi? For what Ralsei would even do this to Kris? Well, if you want short explanation for this theory, here it is. But now let me explain. Eram and Ralsei both looks very similar to each other, has horns, has connections to Kris, and Kris had been specifically, both can travel through different dark worlds, and Eram and Ralsei is two only characters in the entire game that uses any sort of fire magic. We don't have anyone else who uses it at all. And after completing second and third board of Sword Root at the end of both of which you encounter with Eram, the first thing that you see in Green Room is Ralsei playing in a video game, which is not happens in the first board where we doesn't cross path with Eram, which is way too specific to be just a coincidence. Twice. But okay, this all could be just a parallels of two different characters that has connections between them, but not specifically the same character. Could be, if not, thank you ARG. Both entity behind it and Ralsei has a similar type of speech. Both uses isn't it at the end of their sentence more often than other characters. Eram likes to correct others for even the slightest mistake, a trait that Ralsei in some way or another shows each chapter. Both uses conjunction at the beginning of their sentence which is separated by comma, like so, then, but on others. Some responses just sound straight up what Ralsei would say, and considering chapter 5 characterization, even these responses would fit for Ralsei. And another thing that just killed me at that moment is Entity uses it more often than one or two times, not only in the second part of IRG, but also in the first one. And yes, in game there's a few instances when some characters use it in their dialogues one or two times. Except for Ralsei. She, and only she, is the one who uses in her dialogues in each chapter for like 5 to 9 times. It's like her own catchphrase that she uses constantly, and that entity also uses it in their responses more often to be just a one-time thing. Basically just like Flowey and Azuri shared howdy as their catchphrase. And continuing this Flowey and Eram parallels, both are launching always smiling shit that has connections to nightmares and that treats you as part of their closest person. And with this theory in mind, basically an evil irredeemable version of themselves with exaggerated flaws they already had. For now, let's stop this connection between them and ask how this should work. Even if we bring some time travel bullshit, doesn't this just a worse version of Amalgam Knight? And this would be just attempt to bring in new conceptions out of nowhere just to make this theory work. Well, Sans undeniably traveled from Deltarune to Undertale, so timeline traveling is already exist, and it would be very stupid if Toby just out of nowhere would bring this conception only for Sans, without some more deep explanation what it is. So here is my idea, in-depth chapter 7 location. We should get some crazy lore view about world building of Deltarune, and we already know that 3 different save files is diegetic to Deltarune universe. So I would be holding back and not make every playthrough of the game diegetic by making them sort of alternative timelines and making depth sort of crossroads between them. And this explains how Gaster can communicate with us through Twitter, Steam and thank you RG, where he also acknowledged the existence of other players. Gaster is single entity that exists outside of the Deltarune universe in depths and connects to us through his device. TLDR, every playthrough of the game is connected to depths and Gaster exists in there, outside of any copy of Deltarune. Otherwise all of this Gaster tweets is just one big plot hole. Now, let's back to our demigirl. From game over screen after dying to the night without Shadow Mantle, where Gasto tells us to get it. From Thank You RG, where in first round Gaster and then in next 2 rounds Eram directly talked to us, and from the fact that Eram is using Image Friend as their attack, who is basically a Gaster too, we can say that they are working together. In this case, Eram is single, entity that exists outside of Deltarune, in depths together with Gasser, which implies that Eram actually travels through each different playthrough of the game, where he checks or what they are doing to original game, turn it into some sort of manual to the wehre truth. And that explains more than you think. At first, this is why Eram is one of two secret bosses that gets easier from each test, but unlike Ping, it wasn't added in some random patch. It was there from the beginning. Also, it explains what that work is Eram need to do. They need to get to next timeline to show next person existence of wehre truth. And for Eram IS Theory, that means we don't need a time loop paradox to make it work. We just need to understand what happened to Ralsei in one specific timeline. But you may ask a question. What? No, not even why. How Ralsei would become Eram? What would even lead to this? What should even happen in wehre truth to change Ralsei like this? Main point of wehre truth is to show you characters from the other side. Their intrusive thoughts, their regression, their flaws that weren't explored very much, but showed in wehre truth. What would change our perception of characters and reconcilize a lot of things they did or say. We already got this with Noel, where her realization, depression, and suicide attempts were explored and shown. And now this should happen with Susie and Ralsei. It's not a question about will we see them later in wehre truth. The question is how and what would happen to them in there. And now more deeply about Ralsei and from what I should have started this video. In wehre truth, we skip a chapter 5, a crucial part of which was Ralsei's character development. That means that Ralsei in wehre truth still have a mindset of darkness, aren't real, and lesser class that should serve lighteners. Still have a mindset of I am darkner, I am not real, and my main purpose is to serve lighteners. And still have a mindset of my choices doesn't matter. Now, imagine this person learns about the existence of alternative timelines, where every your choices and choices of other people are defined by fate. This is what I lead to. Her mindset would become even worse, and from darkness aren't real will turn to no one is real. This is why Eram treats other characters as key or just things, because Ralsei stopped consider anyone as real. This is why Eram theme is just two repeated notice, because Ralsei doesn't consider itself as real. This is why Burning Eyes doesn't have any motives that would resemble Eram's character. It has genocide motif to resemble Swordroot. It has Car Kingdom motif to resemble from where they take the Shadow Mantle. And Burning Eyes sounds like Black Knife because Burning Eyes, a title, refers not to Eram. They doesn't have any eyes. But to Kris, it's their eyes are burns and flickers. The same way how Black Knife refers to Kris as Knife's Black Knife. It's Kris leitmotif. And neither of all of this resemble Eram's character, because Ralsei stopped consider itself as character. For her, no one is real anymore. Except for Kris, because Kris is the only one which choices are actually matters, because they are the only one around which world actually changes, and the only one who does the different things each timeline and each playthrough. What would recontextualize this phrase from chapter 1 that was said once and never again? And the reason why Ralsei shows the wehre truth to Kris on other playthrough of the game is because she would think Kris actually wants it. From her perspective, Kris made a bunch of very specific decisions that looked like they did that knowingly. And then Ralsei gets into depths where she found out about other wehre truth timelines. And Ralsei would think that Kris wants wehre truth because you cannot start it by accident, you need to know about its existence. This is why Eram shows wehre truth and wants to see Kris Burning Eyes, because it would make Ralsei be even more confident in the idea that Kris wants wehre truth. But why would Eram show this wehre truth on wehre truth save files? And answer again comes from Ralsei's struggle that wasn't resolved in wehre truth. She tries to find her purpose in life, and in the Where as Eram, she's stuck with the idea that her main purpose is to serve others, not live for yourself, because she doesn't consider itself as real. And because of her own idea that no one is real except for Kris, she didn't find any other purpose in her life except for showing Where to Kris from other timelines, and interact with them on it. And the reason why she shows up in Virtual Playthrough is because there is nothing else what she could do. She doesn't consider any other people as real. She doesn't consider itself as real. And any other people she could find herself, she also wouldn't consider as real. But here is the last question, too, actually. If Eram is Ralsei from Virtual timeline, what happens with Ralseis from other timelines? So does this imply that there's actually multiply number of Erams, or Eram just kills every other copy of itself for some reason? And that's still basically a time loop paradox, but on meta level, because some people started Virtual because of Eram influence, some people done the Virtual together with Swordroot, and not every people act as dick shit towards Ralsei on Virtual, not everyone says good keep smiling, some people visit Ralsei's room on their Virtual flyer, so Ralsei still got some character development. And it would be very stupid if Toby missed that crucial point and could base the existence of Eram on theoretical possible timeline that skips every instance of Eram and every instance of Ralsei character development. But here is my final answer to everything what surrounded Eram. My final verdict. Eram is Ralsei not from the Where timeline, but from speedruns of the Where Where has a lot of connection to speedruns. It basically asks the question, what if all of these crazy speedrun techniques had consequences on characters? We saw consequences of equipping so hard weapon, consequences of grinding enemies to be stronger, consequences of killing mandatory bosses that should not be killed, and consequences of skipping half of the game through weird out of bounds glitch. And cherry on top of this connection between Where and speedruns, abbreviation for Where where can also stand as abbreviation for world record. And now, we need to see consequences of not reading the text. Speedrun skips any instance of Eram. Speedrun skips almost any instance of Ralsei character development. It skips Ralsei room, so she doesn't even start her journey in self-identification. It's okay not to smile dialogue, not just to skip it with press it as button. It wasn't even heard, so she keeps smiling. And of course Ralsei would get an idea that Kris wants Where because her first Kris was a dude that tried to do world record in suicide percent category. I'm finally done. You can write your own thoughts about this theory. Maybe somewhere I was wrong, maybe you can add something from yourself if I missed an evidence to this theory. But at the end, thanks for watching. Maybe I'm not right, but at least I came up with something interesting.